Good morning. So I hope y'all had a really good weekend. So we're going to talk more about the quadratic functions today, and the rest of this week really more talking about quadratic functions. So last week we really worked through absolute value equations. So remember, absolute value equations are, when you graph them, they are a V. Okay. Now we're going to look at a quadratic equation, and quadratic functions, they graph to be a U-shaped graph. Okay? Okay, so the standard form of a quadratic function is in the form, so the standard form is going to be y equals ax squared plus bx plus a c. Or remember, y is just f of x. Okay? Standard form means that you're going to have all three of those terms, an x squared, an x, and then your constant term there. Quadratic equations are graphed. They are, when you graph, they will be a U shape. Okay, which we call that a parabola. Okay, so we call that a parabola. Okay, so let's take some examples. And I hope maybe you have a graphing calculator today. So if you do, let's get that out, and I want you to see something real quick. Okay, so here, I've got two quadratic functions here. Okay, the only really big difference that I see is that this is a positive x squared, and then this one is a negative x squared. So I want us to go to our calculators, okay, and let's look at this first function. So turn it on, and now go to that y equals button there. Clear anything that you have in there out. So we're going to type in x, so there's our x right there. So we're going to type in x, and that's going to be a squared, plus a 2x, minus a 5. Okay, so now I want to then go over here and hit the graph button. Okay, so what does that look like? Do you see the shape of that graph? Okay, if you see the shape of that graph, you've got some things going on. It's a U-shaped, right? And we know that because a quadratic is in the form of an x squared right there. So that x squared means that you're going to have a quadratic. That x squared also tells me that I'm going to have two zeros of this function. What zeros are where it's going to cross the x-axis. So it crosses the x-axis in two places. And for this one, it's also going to cross the y-axis there. Okay, do you see that? All right, so it is a U-shaped graph. So I'm just going to kind of go over here and lightly sketch it. It's going to look something like this. Right? It's not beautiful, but you kind of get, now that you see it in a graphing calculator, maybe you can see it. So that is an upward U-shaped graph. Okay? So now let's go to this other one and graph it. So we've got the y equals. So I'm going to clear out everything that I have in there, and this one's going to be a negative x and that little squared button. See that little squared button right there? Okay, then we'll have a plus 3x plus a 7. Okay, now I want to hit my graph. Okay, do you see what's happening here? What happens there? It's opening down. It's a U-shaped graph, but it is, instead of opening up like the other one, it's going to open down. Okay, so this graph is going to open down. And it's also going to have an x intercept, and it's going to have a y-intercept there. So all these little spots are your x-intercepts, and then it crosses the y-axis there. Okay, so now you see this, and you know what a graph of a quadratic is going to look like. So now let's compare these two. So why do you think this one is opening up and this one is opening down? What is the difference here between these two functions? Okay, so this one right here is a positive x squared, and this one is a what? Negative x squared. So if A is positive, it will open up. Okay, and then if A is negative, the parabola will open down. Okay. So then you have a positive here. So this point down here where it changes, where the graph changes, okay, is going to be a minimum point. Where the graph changes, this is going to be a maximum point. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But I do want you to look at that graph and know. So if A is positive, then you're also going to have a minimum. And if A is negative, you're going to have a maximum. That's going to be the next thing that we do, but I just want you to be able to see it there. Okay, with your vertex there. Okay? Good deal? Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is an axis of symmetry. So let's go back to the calculator because you can kind of see it a little bit better right here. What is happening right here? If I was to draw a straight line right through here, does the graph look the same on the left side of that line and the right side of that line? Ooh, you can't really see that. I'm sorry. There's a glare. Right there. Okay, sorry. Okay, so if I was to draw a straight line down the middle here, does the left side of that line and the right side of that line look the same? It's basically going the same direction, the same y values, and everything, okay? So what that is called is the line that you can draw through your quadratic function is called the axis of symmetry. Okay, so the x line, because remember x is an up and down line, right? It goes through the x-axis. Okay, that's called a axis of symmetry. Okay, so an axis of symmetry is the vertical line that divides the parabola into two equal parts. Okay, So the axis of symmetry can be found, okay, by saying negative b over 2a. So we'll give you the x value of your axis of symmetry, okay? And it will also give you the x value of your vertex. Okay, so remember, let's go back up here. So right here, I told you that we had a minimum point and we had a maximum point. So that minimum point is called your vertex. That maximum point is also called your vertex. So this is your vertex. And your vertex is going to have a x value and it's going to have a y value. So the axis of symmetry here, so if I ask you for the axis of symmetry, I'm just looking for this part right here. So this is the formula for axis of symmetry. But it also gives you the x value of the vertex. So this is the axis of symmetry formula, but it also gives you the x value of the vertex. Okay? All right. So to find the y value of the vertex, what are you just going to do? Okay? You're going to plug this x value back into the function. Okay? So to find y value of the vertex, okay, plug axis of symmetry into function. Okay. All right. So let's do just some examples, and then we're going to start graphing these by hand. Okay, so I'm going to put a function up here, and I want you to find the axis of symmetry and tell me, does it have a minimum? So find axis of symmetry. Okay, is it a minimum or maximum? And find the vertex. Okay, so I have f of x is equal to a negative x squared plus a 6x. Okay, so here I've got a negative x squared plus a 6x. Okay, negative x squared plus a 6x. Okay, so to find the axis of symmetry, okay, it's going to be a negative b all over a 2a. So what is my b? That's a 6. So it's going to be a negative 6 all over 2 times a is a, so a is equal to a negative 1 and b is equal to a positive 6. So it'll be negative 6 over negative 2, which is a positive 3. So the axis of symmetry is going to be a positive 3. Okay, is it a min or is it a max graph? So just looking at this, this is a negative right here. So that means it's going to open what? Open down, right? So that means that that's going to be a maximum point. It's going to have a maximum, right? So that negative, so A is negative, so it is going to open down. So it's going to have a maximum. Okay, and now the vertex here, I'm going to plug the axis of symmetry into my function. So I'm going to say f of 3. So I'm going to have a negative 3 squared plus a 6 times a 3. So this is going to be a negative 9 plus an 18, which is going to give me a positive 9. So my vertex, the x value of my vertex is 3. The y value of my vertex is a 9. Okay? So far so good? All right, I'll do this one for me. So find all of that for me. So f of x is equal to x squared minus an 8x plus a 9. So I want you to find the axis of symmetry. Is it a maximum or is it a minimum point? And then how does it open? Does it open up, open down? Find the vertex. Okay, so I'll take a minute and try to do that one. Okay, so my A is going to be a 1. My B is going to be a negative 8. And C is going to be a positive 9. We don't really need that yet. I mean, I just want you to label it though. So, the axis of symmetry is going to be a negative b, so a negative 8, all over 2 times 1. So this is going to be a negative times a negative, which is a positive 8. 8 over 2, which will give me a 4. So your axis of symmetry is a 4. Okay. Is it a minimum or is it a maximum? Okay. A is positive, so A is equal to a positive 1. So that means it's going to open which way? Open up. So that means it's going to have a minimum point. Okay. And then the vertex is now you plug in the axis of symmetry. So we're going to plug in f of 4. So we're going to plug in 4 everywhere we see a x. Right? So what's that going to be? So it's 4 squared is going to give me a 16. 8 times 4 is a negative 32 plus a 9 here. So that's a negative 16 plus a 9, which is going to give me a negative 7. So the vertex is going to be at 4, comma, negative 7. Okay? All right, good deal. And you definitely will see this again in college algebra when you take college algebra. Okay? All right. I showed you how to graph using your calculator, but I also want you to know how to graph by hand. Okay, so graphing quadratic equations by tables. Okay, so the first thing that you need to find is the axis of symmetry. And the vertex, so that'll lead you to the vertex. Okay, so remember your vertex is the changing point. So just like an absolute value equation when you found the vertex of an absolute value equation, the same thing is what you're doing here. So then you want to go, it's going to go in the middle, so then you want to go to the left of that number and then to the right of that number. Okay, so then you're going to place the vertex in the middle of the table. okay, and number up and down. Okay, after you do that, then you will graph. Okay, so let's do this one here. X squared minus a 6x plus an 11. Okay, so x squared minus a 6x plus an 11. So my axis of symmetry is going to be a negative b over 2 times a. So that is a what? B is a, or a is a 1, b is a negative 6, c is an 11. So it's going to be a negative times a negative 6 all over 2 times a 1. So your axis of symmetry is going to be a positive 6 divided by 2, which is going to be a 3. Good? So I found the axis of symmetry, so now I need to plug this in to find my vertex, right? So f of 3, so I'm going to have a 3 squared minus a 6 times 3 plus an 11. So that's 9 minus an 18 plus an 11. So what is that? 9 minus an 18, so that is a negative 9. So that is a positive 2. So the vertex is going to be at 3, comma 2. So I'm going to place that number in the middle of my table. Okay, and then I'm going to go up, and then I'm going to go down. Okay, so 3, comma 2 is your vertex, right? That means that's the changing point of the graph, okay? So if you plug a 0 in there, 0 squared minus 6 times 0, that's going to give you an 11. If you plug a 1 in there, 1 squared minus a 6 plus an 11 will give you a 6. If you plug a 2 in there, 2 squared minus a 12 plus an 11 will give you a 3. And then what's that going to happen? It's symmetric about this point, right? So then these values, since you're going to the left and to the right, these values are going to be the same. These y values are going to be the same. But let's just check it. So 4 squared. So 4 squared minus a 6 times 4, which is a 24, plus an 11 is going to give you a 3. Do you see that? So now we're going to the right, but it's going to be the same y values associated with that because it looks the same on the left and it looks the same on the right. Okay? So then if you plug a 5 in there, 5 squared minus 6 times 5 plus an 11, which gives you a positive 6. And then if you plug a 6 in there, 6 squared minus a 6 times 6 plus an 11 will give you an 11. Okay? So, to graph these, then what do? We're just going to plot these points. Okay? So I'm not going to have enough for this, but 3, so just go ahead and do 3, comma 2. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, there. Let's do 2 up to 3, 1 up to 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's about all I can do, right? 0 will be way up there. 4, we will be at 3, and then 5 we will be at, so it's going to be a U-shaped graph, and this is my vertex here. See how it's right here? This is your axis of symmetry, right? So it looks the same on the right as it does on the left there. Okay, good deal. All right, let's do one more. I want you to graph this one, so do this one for me. So graph f of x is equal to a 2x squared minus an 8x plus a 6. So y'all do this one for me. So take a minute and do this. Okay, so a is going to be equal to a 2, b is going to be equal to a negative 8, and c is going to be in 6. So my first thing is I'm going to find my axis of symmetry. So negative b over 2 times a. So it'll be a negative times a negative 8 all over 2 times 2. So negative 8, negative times a negative 8 is a positive 8 over a 4 is going to give me a positive 2. So that's the x part of my axis of symmetry. So then to find the y part of that, I'm going to plug a 2 in there. Everywhere I see a x. So that's 4 squared times 2 squared. So 2 times 2 gives you a 4. 4 times 2 gives you an 8. Minus a 16 plus a 6. So that's going to give you a what? A negative 2. Okay, so your vertex is going to be at 2, negative 2. Yeah? So, we'll have negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So at 2, we're going to be at negative 2. So now I want to plug in all of these values to the left and to the right. Remember, it's symmetrical. This is your vertex. Okay, so if you plug in a 0, it's going to be what? 6. If you plug in a positive 1, that's going to be 2 minus 8 plus the 6. So that's going to be a 0, right? If you plug in a negative 1, so it's 2 plus 8 plus a 6, right? So it's going to be a 16. So it's going to be symmetric, right? So it's going to be a 0, 6, and a 16. I'm not going to be able to plot that point, 5, 16, or negative 1, 16, but you kind of see what's going on here. So let's plot the vertex. So 2, 1, 2, down to negative 2 is my vertex. At 1, we're going to be at 0. At 0, we're going to be at 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At 2, we're at negative 2. At 3, we're at 0. And at 4, we are at a positive 6. So you see how the graph is changing a little bit? Okay, good deal. All right, so that is graphing quadratics, but this is in standard form. Tomorrow we'll talk about vertex form, so just get familiar with the standard form and how to graph and how to find the vertex and the axis of symmetry. Okay? All right, you'll have a great day.